Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Lunch and Learn session sponsored by Frontline Systems. Today we're going to be talking about an exciting new product called Orchid Extender. Extender is a product that allows you to make your business system smarter by adding the ability to alert people within your organization via email or the creation of notes when field values change. It also allows you to embed workflow controls for approving the entry of new data, such as adding new accounts payable vendors or posting invoice transactions. It also adds security at a field level within the screens of Sage 300 to ensure that only the correct people can see the data that they are approved to see, and then have the ability to report against any of these changes in the database to get a smarter and more secure system. It comes with built-in inquiries and reports that log these changes and allow you to set up the events that we allow you to customize the business logic of Sage 300 without actually writing custom programs, what we call scripts. So as we start, we'll start off with a review of the options. And the options give us the sense of being able to do something that a lot of Sage 300 customers have been asking us to do, and that is the ability to track users who are logging into the system and how long they're staying in the system. And we use the concept of email as an alert function to notify individuals of any of these changes or activities that are going on within Sage 300 so that you don't have to remember. You can simply have the system monitoring these activities and then sending out alerts to the appropriate people at the appropriate time. We use the concept of SMTP, or Standard Mail Transfer Protocol, rather than the standard Outlook email client, so that you go directly to the email exchange or Lotus Notes server to send out these email communications without having to authenticate the email recipient address. But one of the first things we do is we track logs of users signing into Sage 300. This was a request by specific Sage 300 customers who want to know who's logging in and logging out of Sage 300. So as a basic primary feature, that's one of the things we can do with Extender. But for the more advanced features, we can start to do things like logging changes. So we're going to use the terminology of an event. And an event just simply means any time that you insert or add a new record within Sage 300 or update an existing record. And a lot of people have recognized that within Sage 300, out of the box, you can only see the last change for a record in the database. You can't actually see what it changed from. You just know what it changed to with a date and a timestamp and the user ID. So by creating a log, you're able to then keep a series historically of every change to a particular record, and you can always see what it started as and what it's been changed to with a date and a timestamp and the user ID for who made the change. So this is a very basic function within Extender. The next thing we can do is we can run a program. And that means that anytime we add a record or modify a record within Sage 300, we could actually invoke another process to happen automatically, such as running a batch file or some other routine that you want to create another process automatically. Next is sending an email. So we just talked about using email as an alert function. Well, again, anytime something changes, so somebody posts a sales order, that can be sent automatically to the controller or to the sales team to notify them that an order has been processed on behalf of a client. And then lastly, you can create an Orchid note. And that means that when we make a change to something, that could not only be sent as an email alert or logged as a change in the database, we could also create a note so that the next time somebody looks, let's say, at a customer record for a credit note or a credit limit change, there would be a note of that change popping up automatically. So notes or email can both be used as an alert feature, and the note would then also show you historically how that record has been modified. So let's take a look at a couple of different examples. I mentioned the credit limit check. What we can do here is we can log a change as well as creating an Orchid note. So using that example, we would be able to set up a script against the AR record. And not only could we log the change, but we could also limit the amount that can be set up against a customer credit limit. So this provides field level security within Sage 300. So I don't have to restrict access to a field 100%. I can still give users access to the field, but I can just set parameters for what an acceptable value is within that field. And so this is another way that we can extend the core functionality. So using this as an example, I'm going to just turn on the tray icon so that the note pops up for us. When I look at the AR customer credit limit against my AR customer, I can go to a particular customer, and you can see on the right-hand side that there's a note attached to this customer that the credit limit has recently been changed from $11,000 to $15,000, and that change was done by the administrative user on February the 15th at 10:20 a.m. Eastern. And if we look at the processing page, we can see that, yes, the current credit limit that's available is $15,000. Now, if somebody wants to come along and make a change to that credit limit, we've set a parameter for what an acceptable value is. So if someone comes along and says, I'd like to increase this to $25,000, and we tab over the field or we want to save that record, we notice that an error message pops up saying that the maximum credit limit allowed is $20,000. So this is a way, as we say, to create intelligence within Sage 300 so that the system is monitoring activities by user or by field to make sure that only acceptable values that meet company policies and procedures are allowed to be created within Sage 300. So we call it increasing the IQ or the intelligence of Sage 300 because now the system is actually watching over what people are doing and either logging the change or in this case creating a message to say that your entry is not valid. But if we do want to make a change from $15,000 and let's say we go to $18,000, we don't get an error message because that's within the acceptable range, and we can save that as a record change in the system. Now, the note hasn't changed yet because we have to refresh the screen in order to refresh the note. So if I toggle off customer 1000 and then toggle back to 1100, you can see now that the note has been updated to show that I've changed the credit limit from $15,000 to $18,000, that the change was done by me, the administrative user, and now I've updated the time to 11:43 and 24 seconds Eastern Time. So a very simple example of how we can utilize the Orchid notes along with Extender to be recording changes and popping them up as a note so that the next time somebody looks at this customer, that note would automatically pop up so they can see that the credit limit has been recently changed. And that might be important information for people that are working on the collections process or potentially the salespeople that want to make a sale to this customer and they see that they've just recently had a credit limit change, so they might not be able to get more credit extended in the short term. Now, in addition to having the note pop up, we also created a log. So the other thing that we added was the fact that when we make a change to credit limit, we also want to record that in a log file. So you can see on the top line here, the most recent change was 11:43:24, what was displayed in the note, and we logged that change. So we can see that the credit limit amount was changed from $15,000 to $18,000. So we've got a historical record here of the last few changes to the credit limit over time, and we can see that it's increased from $7,500 to $11,000, and then 11 to 15, and then ultimately 15 to 18,000. So this gives you a more complete audit trail of what's happening with that customer credit limit over time.
And there are other things that you can log in this system as well. In fact, virtually any field within Sage 300, including third-party products that have been written within the SDK, can now log changes and either view them through this inquiry or generate a report. And if you want, you can specify just a specific view ID, and the view ID is the screen that you're looking at within Sage 300. So if I wanted to filter that just on the AR0024 view, you see that it minimizes to show just the 3 lines that we're looking at. And we could also isolate by a specific field, so any of the fields within that view, or by a particular user. We just want to see what Jane's been doing in Sage, and it would show all the changes for the work that Jane's been doing on a specific view or across all of the views by a certain date range. The next thing that we can do with Extender is by incorporating scripts, we can actually automate processes. So what we've done with some customers who have a lot of orders within order entry is we've automated the sales order process so that when they enter an order against a particular customer, it will automatically populate the state, the zip code, and the appropriate sales tax that applies for that particular order. So the operators don't have to visit all of those fields. They can simply enter the customer with what they're buying, and the system takes over from there to correctly populate the other fields that are required. So that's called scripting, and the benefit of the script is that it works behind the scenes to automate processes within Sage 300, but when you upgrade Sage 300 to a current version or you use a product update within a version, it doesn't break the script. It will upgrade like the rest of the modules within Sage 300 so that you don't have to worry about making changes or incurring additional costs. The highest level of Extender allows you to add custom tables within Sage 300. There's many times when Sage 300 customers have come to us and said, you know, it'd be nice if we could incorporate some of this external data, either because it's statistical in nature or because it measures key performance indicators for the particular business that they're in, and they want to relate that to financial accounting data that's stored within Sage 300. So what we're able to do now with the custom table is essentially create another table within Sage 300 that you can put anything into that you'd like. And then we can link that to any other piece of information within Sage's database. And if you want, generate a custom screen off of that custom table, either in Windows or as a web form. So you'll be able to access it through the standard Windows Classic desktop or in a browser. And so this gives you the ultimate control to be able to add any other information within Sage 300 that you like and make it a truly management reporting-based system. So some practical examples of how we can use Extender in other ways I can show you by analyzing what we do with notes and documents. So Orchid has another product called Information Manager, which has a number of components to it, 2 of which are notes and document attachment, that allow you to store additional information. So much like we can do with custom tables, which would be transactional data within the database, we can also start adding notes or documents to those transactions or master files within Sage 300. So we have different types of information that we can store. We can add a note, or we can attach a document and either store that in a network folder somewhere on your network, or we can link it to Microsoft SharePoint if you'd like to take advantage of some of the workflow capability built into MS SharePoint. We can also incorporate Extender scripts. So the script that I just mentioned in Extender, where you can automate processes, also allows us to link the notes to various fields or screens within Sage 300. So I'm going to give you some practical examples of that in just the next few minutes. So let's take a look at customer notes and customer documents to show you how easy it is to incorporate additional information within the system. And just so you know, we have different types of notes, so you can define a different series of notes that are relevant to different people within your organization. So salespeople might be interested in customer notes, warehouse operations people might be interested in item notes, and the sales customer service people might be interested in just notes around orders. So you can segregate these notes and then define different roles within the organization, and these roles will determine what you can do with the notes, whether you can add notes, view notes, edit notes, or delete, or any combination of those 4 criteria. And then the user roles are tied to the user ID within Sage 300. So certain individuals within your organization will have certain access rights to certain notes within the system. So you can create as complex of a structure as you need to define who gets to see what notes and what they can do with those notes. So let's take a look at an order entry example where we want to create a sales order against a particular customer. And this will give you a combination of both notes as well as document management link. So I can see right off the bat I have access to notes about different locations within the system. And what some people do is they actually assign a note to the new key in the order number field. So you can specify whenever someone comes in to create a new order that a note pops up giving them the policies and procedures for entering orders within the system. So notes can be a handy tool not just about customer or vendor specific information, but they can also incorporate your internal processes and policies. So for instance, you might have a note say that customer orders for new customers have to be cleared through the credit department first, so that somebody might be able to enter the order. And then we could incorporate an email from Extender to automatically send an email when a new customer order is created. When we start to enter a customer, you automatically see information about that specific customer. So in this case, against customer 1100, we see the note for the credit limit change that we made recently to that customer, and that's visible here. But we also have a breakdown of an aging and outstanding transaction information. So this is using a combination of notes as well as Extender, because what Extender allows us to do is dynamically look at outstanding transactions for this customer and create a link where we can open up information about that customer before we create the new order. So I can drill into the AR customer master file from the OE shipment or the OE order screen, and again the notes for that customer appear here, and I can open that up to see a list of other notes against that customer, or I could see documents against that customer that had been set up. So that's one way that we can use Extender with notes to make the notes more powerful and actually make the notes dynamic. Or we could look at, in this case, other OE pending orders, and that would then open up a list of outstanding orders. Now if we choose a different customer, let's choose a customer that's got some other information. Oh, sorry, I've got that customer number wrong here. Let's make that 1200. And there's customer 1200. And you can see the notes in this case are color-coded. So the color-coded notes are ways that we can identify different types of notes within the system. And again, there might be red because there's a reminder about terms. That's an urgent type of note. There's also other notes here in different colors that might just be operational type notes. So here with customer 1200, we not only have the aging again, so we could see there's one that's over 90 days, and then we can drill into the detail and see the specific invoice, and then drill right back to that invoice that's stored in the system with a document attached for that particular invoice. So we can drill from the OE order screen through the AR aging right back to an old AR invoice for the same customer and see the details around that particular invoice. So what it's essentially creating with a combination of notes and Extender is a powerful console where you have access to any information about that customer from one screen, and I don't have to navigate through menus to find specific detailed information about that customer. Likewise, if I wanted to see other OE orders, so things that may not have shipped and been invoiced yet in this case, but just something that's a pending order, I can then open up access to all of the orders for this customer and drill into a specific order for that customer. So this is giving me sales order history and access to previous orders, and then the notes that apply against that specific order, or documents, as it were. So you can see how you can add any type of information that you want, store it as a note against a particular transaction, and that will be visible from the note screen on a new order that I want to create for this particular customer in this case. So that's the combination of notes with Extender, where I make the notes more powerful, and then of course I could have documents attached to these transactions at the same time. Now let's take a look more closely at the document management link. The document management link is a powerful tool for attaching documents to various types of transactions. In this case, let's take a look at AP invoices. Generate the tray icon again. And in this case, what I want to do is open up an AP invoice batch and open up the screen. So now you can see when I use document attach, based on a specific transaction type, I can see POs against the original invoice and be able to just double click on that and open up the purchase order. So if I want to have support against a particular AP invoice, I could have the PO attached, I could have a contract attached, or I could have other specific vendor information about that vendor. In this case, it's also 1200. And this gives me the power, particularly in an intercompany situation where I want to move documents from one company to another because I'm allocating expenses across different companies. As part of that transaction entry, I can attach a PO or the actual invoice so that when another related party is receiving an allocation of the expense, we have supporting documentation attached to that entry so they get an understanding of what the expense was for and can see the original source document that validates why they're getting an allocation or a portion of that expense. And with this, you see the Add or Explore. What you're able to do is explore where the documents are stored. So what some clients do is they have a scanning device where all of the invoices come in and get scanned, and then they know as they're creating that transaction, they simply grab and drag and drop that document into the window, and it gets added in as an additional document to be stored against that vendor record. Now when we create a new order or invoice, let me show you what happens in that instance. Because what you can do is you can have documents automatically renamed. So let's say this is just an AP invoice entry. And we'll choose a different vendor this time. So you see what's happening on the right-hand side here, that as I enter information into the field, it starts to recognize that I'm working with vendor 1400 and that I'm about to enter a document number. So typically what our clients do is they'll have a combination of vendor document numbers set up for attachments so that if they just want to see a specific invoice, they've got the specific invoice for a transaction, but if they then at the same time would like to see all documents against a particular vendor, by entering that vendor, they'll see all documents against a particular vendor. And then they could explore and open up, because what we do is we actually create a folder on the network dynamically whenever we add a new document for a vendor for the first time. So you would create the folder structure for your documents within the network, and then as you add documents, it'll create the individual folders by vendor name or number and store those documents in those folders for you. So watch what happens when I enter the invoice number here, 8890. The system's already picking up the fact that the document is going to be called INV 8890. And then when I want to explore and add a document into that folder, you see that it automatically renames the document to match the invoice number that we've stored in the screen. So that's a powerful feature, to be able to properly label the document based on the information that you've set up within the AP invoice screen. And again, there could be related POs that you explore and attach, or this might have been set up within the PO module, and you don't have to attach it again here. These documents will actually travel with the transaction as it's posted to the GL or even sent over to another Sage 300 company, because the documents are stored in a folder. They're not stored in the Sage 300 database, so you can point to the same folder from multiple screens within one company or multiple companies within Sage 300. So that makes it easy for you to maintain one set of documents and reference those documents from multiple places within Sage 300. And overall, that's a much more efficient way to manage the documents. And it also means that as you're storing information about documents, you're not increasing the size of your Sage 300 database exponentially. Because particularly in the case where you look at specific items, so let's say if we went back to order entry as an example, and we wanted to store not only documents but images of particular transactions, when we look at a particular document, well, actually, let's go through here. We won't post this. We'll just look up an existing order. If we were to come down here and look at a specific screen for that item, so when I look at that line item and I pop over, it would highlight the folder, and if there's an image file, that would pop up automatically. So that's our koala lamp. Now what you can do is you can also trigger that as a hot link. You can have a URL link. So it could be linking to an external web page where you've stored information, or you could actually pop up the image automatically to appear when you look at an item within the system. Okay, so we've reviewed the possibility of extending core functionality within Sage 300 by being able to set up various event types where you can log changes, you could run programs, you can send emails or create notes against any field within Sage 300, and then you can use scripts to automate processes or even add custom tables for storing additional fields of information within Sage 300. And then we've seen a combination with creating notes and documents within Sage 300 where you're either creating static notes, or you can use Extender with notes to make those notes dynamic and view information in multiple places from one screen in Sage 300. And then finally, we reviewed the ability to attach documents either through a network folder or SharePoint so that you can store supporting documents for transactions or master files within Sage 300. And those get stored outside of the database, so we don't increase the size of your database, and they can also be referenced from multiple screens or different companies within Sage 300.